Greetings and thank you for downloading the Superb Diamond Range podcast. I'm your host Superb, and this is going to be episode 38 about mobile phone contracts versus pay-as-you-go as part of the financial series. So I'm going to start off by saying that particularly more and more nowadays, the phones are considered a really big deal. Obviously now we've got smartphones that, have new technology, so you can do millions of things with phones that you couldn't have done years ago when, the first phones came, which were really basic. Obviously you could phone and text. Now with the smartphones, it's all about being able to connect to the internet, being able to use apps, things like that. What I've noticed is that it's all about kind of keeping up with the Joneses. So, in some societies, maybe like the likes of Japan, one of the ways that they show their status is by their vehicle, their car. And it seems that in today's world, a lot of people demonstrate their, supposed status by which phone they've got in their pocket. In particular, the likes of the iPhone, the Samsung phones, all these type of phones that, obviously really, really expensive. And, don't get me wrong, they do have great technology, but they're really expensive. And, to me, I just can't understand the hype. I mean, I have owned a really basic phone. I've also at one point owned a quite high-end phone. So I can appreciate, it does feel very, very powerful to have one of these, newer phones, but it's also costs an arm and a leg. And, I always question if it's really worth it and if it's what you need. So for me, you see videos of people queuing up outside the Apple store, waiting, for the latest phone, and, forking out big money for it. And again, I suppose if it's what you're really into, if it's, you enjoy phones and you enjoy having the newest technology and you've got the money set aside for it, then, by all means that's all good. So I'm mainly sort of addressing my, opinion on, going down the route of a contract or versus pay as you go. So, I mean, I'll start off with contracts. Well, I've had many contracts in my life, and at present I'm on pay as you go. But, like I say, many times I've been on contract. Either, a contract with a phone, say over 12 months. I think that's the longest term I've ever done. I've never done the newer ones, which are about 24 months because the phones are getting so expensive now. But yeah, I've always kind of been maybe 12-month contract and that kind of thing. So basically, in my opinion, a lot of the contracts are very overpriced and they seem cheap at the offset. In some cases, you may get the handset free. In some cases, you might get some money towards. You have to put down some money towards it to sort of buy the phone with the contract. Ultimately, people look at it and they say, "Oh, that's only £40 a month. That's only £50 a month." But of course, they've got you on the hook for 24 months, so it's quite a long time. And a lot of these companies, they may get like a subsidized phone for you initially, but when you see over the months, particularly in the sort of like latter part of the contract, you sort of feel like you're being really ripped off, to be quite honest. So in my honest opinion, I find it much cheaper to buy a phone in cash. Maybe again, it's not so easy for the sort of like, the latest iPhone, for example, or for the latest Samsung phone. But, my idea of an expensive smartphone these days would probably be, the most I'd probably go would be like a sort of 150, and that would be on something like a Moto G5, which is a really great phone. It's the phone I've got at the moment. Again, I know there'll be people that will disagree with me and say that, you know, iPhone's 10 times better or whatever, but as I say, you're paying 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times the price. So of course, you know, you're probably going to get a better phone. But you know, is it really worth it? And do we need to spend that much on a phone when ultimately a phone's supposed to be just to sort of keep in contact with people? You know, obviously we've all got home computers, we've got laptops as well, but it seems that the phone has kind of taken over them. So I guess it's convenient because it's mobile. You know, one of the great things I like about the smartphones is the ability to, you know, to listen to podcasts, maybe to stream music. You know, the various apps like Pocket Casts and, you know, Spotify, things like that. So it's quite good. So, you know, don't get me wrong, I do think there are a lot of advantages to having a smartphone. I just don't agree with some of the prices, and in particular the contracts, how they sort of rip people off quite a bit. One of the main things that bothers me about the contract is that they kind of lure you into the deal. They'll say, oh, we'll give you X amount of minutes, we'll give you X amount of texts and data. And within about a year or two of being in the contract, you'll see the same network provider maybe offering better deals for new customers. And unfortunately, you're stuck to the contract, so you've still got to keep paying your monthly amount and only be entitled to what was originally agreed. So there's not a lot of freedom in that. So for sure, I mean, I think buying a phone in cash is much better because obviously you own the phone. You know, if you want to sell it later on, you can. You know, you're just much better off. It's also good if you get a SIM-free phone, so that, you know, if you want to put a different network's SIM card in, or if you go abroad, say you're on holiday and you want to use a local SIM to get local rates, then by all means that would be a great idea too. I mean, a lot of people have this belief, and you know, I believed it for a long time as well, and I think that's what tempted me to go on contract on and off throughout my life. But it's that pay-as-you-go or prepay is like a rip-off. It's too expensive. And I mean, I disagree with this. I think it pay-as-you-go, if you know where to look and you find a good deal, it can be better than contract. And as I say, the main thing is that the freedom of not having to pay the same amount every month for 24 months. To me, you can easily get yourself into debt with a contract if you you know, make too many calls, or if you know, go outside your allowance, and it can end up being really, really expensive. I mean, one of the ways that I have thought about that can be quite good for people that kind of want the contract benefits, but without being tied in too long, are these sort of newer phone plans now that they call SIM only, where sometimes you can get 12-month contracts, sometimes you can get 30-day contract. Obviously, I'd lean more towards a 30-day contract, because obviously if you're not happy within a month, you've got the freedom to leave, whereas 12 months you're still tied in. But I mean, this option is quite good if you know that you need a lot of minutes and you want a good deal. Obviously, if you do it over 12 months, it's probably going to be slightly more expensive than if you do it over a 30-day, because obviously 30-day you could leave any time pretty much. But yeah, I think if you weren't convinced by going pay as you go, then a SIM only would be a good start. And obviously if you buy your phone outright, so that would be a good move. The SIM only deals are quite good. Again, I personally prefer pay as you go. You know, I just like the idea that I'm free to switch between any network provider within the pay as you go anytime. You know, so if I find a pay as you go company that's cheaper than the one I'm currently with, then of course I have the ability to just get a pack code from the provider and move on. So to me, that is why one of the reasons I really like pay as you go. I also like the ability to optimize. So on pay as you go, if there was a month I knew that I was going to be quite a lot needing to make phone calls and text people, maybe even needed some data more than usual. So I'm maybe going to be traveling around. I like the ability that you can, as I say, optimize, and you can maybe top up a small amount if you don't need a lot, or a bigger amount if you need it, so you've got that ability, that flexibility to say, okay, so this month I'll top up with £5, next month's busy months, I'm going to put £10 or £15 on, and you can, adjust it to your needs. So to me, that's another great thing about it. Again, one of the biggest things about obviously switching provider is the network quality. I'm trying to think, when I was years ago, I remember joining the likes of Orange, who I believe are now EE, and even the likes of T-Mobile. And for whatever reason, the signal that I had in the area I was living was terrible. And also I used to get a lot of drop calls where I had, full signal, or it appeared to be full signal. But then I would get a voicemail and it would be from somebody that tried to call me, but apparently never got through. So that happens a lot. So having a decent network's important. For me, I've always kind of found that the likes of O2 or Vodafone, at least in my experience, have always been a decent network, and usually given me a pretty decent signal and not too many drop calls. Whereas the likes of T-Mobile or Orange or maybe EE, I've not had so many good experiences with them. So I would say that, picking a decent network that has a strong signal where you live and I suppose where you travel and where you work is quite important. I remember being in a workplace that was known for having a very poor signal. And when I was on a sort of a lesser network, I would find that I would get, no signal at all. But when I was on a better quality network, I would get at least 1 or 2 bars, even in a sort of bad part of the building. So that was quite important to me. And regards to data plans, do we really need so much data? I fell for this. I remember having a contract where they gave me 2 gig of data. And I remember thinking, 2 gigs is quite good, really, really good. And then I remember sort of a few times running out of data, maybe midway through the month, because I'd really rinsed through it. Made some really silly mistakes, like streaming YouTube videos and things, which I know is not a good idea when you're only using data, and much better to do over Wi-Fi. But I made those silly mistakes, and I remember I had a discount through my sister because she worked for one of the big network providers, and it was something like a 30% discount. And I was already receiving the discount on the plan that I had. But I thought, well, if I get a more expensive plan, I'll get an even bigger discount. So I convinced myself that this would be the way to go. And I remember thinking, okay, I went into the store and I mentioned to them, do you have any plans that give me more data? And they said, oh yeah, you can pay a little bit more and we'll give you, 10 gig. And I agreed to it. But of course, later on, I regretted it because I realized that you don't need so much data. Data is, if you organize yourself, if you download what you need before you go out. So say in my case, I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I'll download the podcast in advance, over a Wi-Fi at home, and it'll be the same for music. If I can, download music onto my phone, I'll do it beforehand so that I don't need to go online. And again, if I do need to go online, I only need a small amount of data anyway. Another thing I kind of realized, and I watched I listened to 2 episodes of a podcast called Radical Personal Finance, and there was an interview that they done that basically there was a guy called Technical Mashugana, and they did 2 kind of episodes discussing it, but they were basically talking about, trying to spend less on communications. And what a lot of it was to do with was, it was almost like we're afraid to be bored. So we're basically, we need data because, like a bus journey home, or a cycle ride home, say, we can't just do it without having something to listen to or be distracted or watch a video or be entertained. So we're becoming addicted to basically, watching like YouTube videos or, maybe going onto Facebook and checking notifications for Twitter, that type of thing. So ultimately, sometimes people think they need loads of data, but really we just need to, plan ahead what we need and maybe not use our phone as much like an internet device. Maybe try to go back to the old ways of using it as a communication device, i.e. make a quick phone call to let somebody know you're going to meet them, or, send a few texts across. But I think, again, the way people use phones now is completely different. And it's the same as how people use the internet. Another thing about the data as well is that, if you get too many notifications on your phone, there is obviously ways to turn these off. But ultimately, it's easy to wipe through your data quite, without even really knowing that you're doing it. So, to me, it's like, I don't think it's worth getting really expensive data because at the end of the day, you don't need it, and you can always wait till you get home and use your home Wi-Fi, which is, already been paid for and, is usually unlimited. So that's pretty important. Again, talking about the way we use our phones, again, mainly over Wi-Fi, but a lot of people now don't really call each other that much, and I've got no problems with that. But what I will say is that now with the smartphones, there's a lot of apps that, again, will save you using up text messages, maybe phoning people using your call time. Again, a lot of these are all over the Wi-Fi, but things like WhatsApp, or Skype over the Wi-Fi, and other sort of voice over IP options. I find that with a lot of my friends, and particularly if you've got friends in different countries or different around the world, WhatsApp's a great way to keep in contact, as well as Skype. And now you can make WhatsApp phone calls, over the Wi-Fi. You can text people. And, it's not going to affect your allowances, which is really, really great. So that's kind of how I use my phone a lot now. I'll use the likes of WhatsApp or I'll use Skype, and that will save me needing to have an expensive plan or a contract, or use up, minutes and text on a pay-as-you-go. So from that point of view, the smartphone's really great because it can, on one hand, it can be expensive, I guess, depending on the one you buy. But on the other hand, it has a lot of useful things that can save you money in the long term, which is really great. So I'll ultimately say, don't be fooled to renew your contract because it may be a trap. So again, when you try to cancel a contract, you could be hours and minutes on the phone with a representative trying to talk you out of it. And what they'll usually do is they'll, offer half price, or they'll try and give you more minutes. They maybe offer you some extra landline, maybe give you more data as if you haven't already got enough. And it's their job to, keep you as a customer, to keep you on the hook. And ultimately they'll get commission possibly, if they manage to keep you on contract. But, if you make your mind up and you decide that pay-as-you-go is a better option, and as I say, there is a lot of companies out there that do pay-as-you-go, and the deals are really good. You'd be surprised what you can get on pay-as-you-go. I'll throw out a few names of different providers that are really good, do some really good deals. The likes of giffgaff, Tesco, Asda, just to name a few. And ultimately, they are all very, they all use different, these type of companies The actual mainstream providers, so the likes of O2, Vodafone, or EE, if you go with them directly, they on pay-as-you-go particularly, they can be quite a rip-off, and charge you quite a lot, and you don't really get a lot for your money. But the way around this is to go with the companies that use these networks. So the likes of giffgaff, who use O2, I believe Tesco use O2. I think Asda maybe use EE at the moment, but they used to use Vodafone. But basically just going through one of these sort of like side companies can result in you getting a better deal, and still getting a decent network as well. So that would be my method of doing it. And again, the great thing about pay-as-you-go, if you find that you're paying too much as you go, you can move on and find another provider. And you can do this almost immediately. Just a phone call to get your PAC code, put in authorization code, and that's you moved on. So again, you couldn't do that in the contract. You'd have to wait till the end of the contract, or you'd have to pay heavy penalties for coming out of your contract early. Again, coming out of your contract early can be beneficial, providing you do the math and you work out how much you would have paid until the end of the contract versus how much you'll pay on pay-as-you-go. So it's always worth getting a calculator out and, working out, is it better for me to cancel the contract early, pay the heavy charges, if I'm going to change the way I use my phone and my, and how much I'm going to be paying on pay-as-you-go. So it's always something to consider. But again, you need to, figure that out for yourself, what works best for you. In some cases, it might be better just to wait the contract out. One reason I would say to not be in contract as well is I remember years ago, I had one of the old Nokia phones. It may have been a 3310, if anyone remembers the old phones. It was a brilliant phone, probably the best phone I ever had. But there was a day when I was out walking and I had unlocked the phone it was unlocked in my pocket, the phone. And I'd actually sent 220 texts to my cousin in Ireland. And, he'd sort of text me back because he was annoyed that I kept texting him and it wouldn't stop. His phone wouldn't stop, vibrating or kind of, making the sound that a text was coming through because he was at work. And, until I got his message, I was like, actually, I wasn't doing this deliberately. This was a mistake. And the text message was probably blank, or it may have just had like one letter in it because, I didn't write the text. It was just, my phone was unlocked. It was in my pocket. And it led to me getting quite a big bill. This was before we were allowed to, the EU thing was going on, and now you can roam and the texts are a lot cheaper to send to Europe than they were back then. But back then it was like 50p or 60p to send a text. So I got a sky high bill, and I remember contacting the network provider at the time, which I believe was O2, and explaining to them that, the phone was in my pocket. I did not send a text with any, words on it or any message. And also if I did, why would I repeat it so many times? I was just trying to see if they would, understand the situation, sympathize maybe. And of course, what ended up happening was they more or less said it's tough, that you just got to pay it. And of course I paid it, but it's just a reminder of how contracts, how easy it is to get your bill out of control or even run up a debt almost. So that's just a kind of reminder. Other stories I've heard from friends have been things like they've been in, they've got a contact that's in America and it's saved in their contacts, and their phone's been in their pocket, unlocked, and by mistake it was on quick dial, and they ended up, ringing somebody in America, and, at the other end they didn't hang up or anything, so the call went on for quite a while. And of course they end up with a really sky high bill. Yet again, pay as you go, if you haven't got the money there, it will just run out of credit. It may not even allow you to make the phone call in the first place. So that's another protection with the pay as you go. Another reason for pay as you go as well is if you ever struggle paying your bills and, I don't know, somebody say loses their job, you've always got to try and find the money for your priority bills, your rent, your mortgage, your gas, electric, your food. But not having that hefty contract payment, that you still got to pay regardless for 24 months, is a weight off your back. The fact that you haven't got to worry about it, I think that's really important. And to me, you sleep better. You just know that, push comes to shove, you haven't got to top up your phone, you haven't got to buy any more, pay every month a direct debit. So to me, the freedom and peace of mind of pay-as-you-go far outweighs mobile phone contracts. And again, I know that there are going to be people out there that are going to say, well, pay-as-you-go is a rip-off, but have a little look online and, compare the different plans that are out there. And also ask yourself if you need unlimited. This was another thing that was brought up in the Radical Personal Finance with Technical Meshuggah interview, that they talked about, do you really need as much as you get? Do you need unlimited? A lot of people don't need unlimited, but they've got it because they think it's better, and they've got that, ultimately you got to, I guess, look at your usage and also, do you need to call people every single day? Can you sort of go a day or two without it? And again, change your behavior a bit. Again, it's not for everybody, and I mean, there is unlimited plans on pay-as-you-go. They're just a little bit more expensive, but they are out there. You can get one on giffgaff for £20 per month, which, may still be cheaper than what you'd be paying on contract for a phone plus a plan. As for myself, currently I'm on pay-as-you-go and I'm with giffgaff, and I'm actually just paying the £5 a month, which I believe gives me 150 minutes, 500 texts, and the data is about 100 megabit. But again, I mostly use data, I mostly use internet at home over the Wi-Fi, or at my workplace where they have Wi-Fi as well. So, unless I'm really stuck, I'm not too bothered about it, to be honest. And again, I've been a heavy data user before as well, so I know what it's like. A lot of people do feel they need it. But, it's all about locating yourself in a place where you can pick up Wi-Fi. So whether it be, if you're out and about, there might be a shop or a coffee shop or a restaurant. I've heard stories now that even on the London Underground, you can pick up Wi-Fi from Virgin Media or from O2. So there's always a way to get a connection of sorts. And but again, there's other ways to amuse yourself. You can read a book, or as I say, pre-download everything that you need in advance, and you've got it there then. But I'm happy with my plan, and I have no plans to go back to contract. Even if they offered me a contract for same price, £5 a month, and it was unlimited, I still wouldn't do it, because having the freedom to, not pay or walk away anytime, to me is much more valuable. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. And please obviously subscribe to the YouTube channel, and obviously recommend it to your family and friends if you found this informative. And thank you very much for listening to the Superb Diamond Range Show.